I'm Jason Butcher. I'm a forester with the Humboldt Del Norte unit. I work in the pre-fire battalion here in Humboldt, and basically the reason we exist is to do pre-fire fuel treatments across the landscape. We do that through our veg management program. The veg management program takes on a couple different flavors. One would be prescribed fire, and the other being mechanical fuel treatments. With our prescribed fire program, we tend to focus on large ranches, larger parcels, along ridge lines, things like that. And in our mechanical fuel reduction world, we tend to focus on the WUI area and egress, ingress routes for emergency personnel to get in without flames licking at their sides, or folks evacuating and trying to get out in the safest manner as possible. Wildland urban interface. Well, as folks have moved out of what was city propers and pushed themselves into the hills or out into the more suburban areas, that interface between what was wild and what is inhabited by folks with their structures, they're coming together. And so those tend to be, there's less infrastructure in place for fire suppression. There's no fire hydrants perhaps. There's less roads. Typically we require 2 ways in and out of a particular neighborhood. That doesn't exist in a lot of those areas. Well, probably one of the best exciting parts that's changed recently is the cost share program out of our veg management program. It used to be based on the benefit to the public or the private landowner. A portion of the overall cost was divided. Now that private landowner cost has been waived. So there is no cost to the landowner for our veg management program activities. As far as the veg management program goes, there isn't really a mistake to be made in the application process. I think because it's not like a grant. If it were a grant where the landowner basically maybe hasn't put together a complete package, a thorough thought, something that made sense, they didn't vet their financials, the prescription or what they propose to do maybe doesn't pass a reality check. Those are mistakes in the grant approval or the grant process. But with the VMP program, there isn't any. So the VTP is a new document. It's a new statewide environmental impact report that allows us to do prescribed fire, mastication, WUI fuel treatments, and herbicide applications to treat fuels. And because of the environmental clearancing that's necessary, the botany, the archaeological, the wildlife surveys, the threatened and endangered species issues, maybe it's limited operating periods that have to be put in place, things like that. Just to get the approval could take over a year. With implementation can take up to 2-3 years, depending on how big the project is. It's basically having a project that you've done the ground truthing, that you've made sure that what you're proposing is feasible, that you've done some analysis on the current costs and whether that particular equipment that you think you're going to put on the ground is capable of operating on that ground. And then if it's a multi-landowner project, that all your other landowners are on board with their proposal so that we don't have sort of a hole in the fence, if you will, something that's not treated because that landowner doesn't want to play in this project. So putting all of those things together and coming forward with a really solid proposal is key. And it unfortunately takes a lot of preloading and unpaid work. We'd like to see fuel treatments connect to things. Other projects, for instance, if it builds off of a pre-existing project, it could be a forest health project, it could be an NTMP that put in a fuel break on a ridge or something like that. If they can tie them together or at least transfer that information, especially a lot of stuff the NTMPs do, we don't necessarily know or we don't have in our GIS systems. And so when they make the proposal, a lot of times we glean pieces of information from that about what's going on in the environments that we work in.